Hey buddy, if you are new to the channel, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. Now let's begin the story. I never thought twice about errands. I grew up in a mid-sized town called Ridgefield, Indiana, the kind of place where people left their front doors unlocked in the summer and teenagers complained there was nothing to do. My childhood was filled with bike rides down quiet cul-de-sacs, little league games in the park, and late-night runs for ice cream at the dairy barn. By the time I was 21, Ridgefield felt small, predictable, almost boring. That was the comfort of it. We had a handful of big stores, but the Red Mart on the edge of town was the place everybody went. It sat on the border between a fading strip mall and a neighborhood of modest ranch houses with trimmed lawns and maple trees. Moms dragged kids there for school supplies, teenagers loitered in the electronics aisle, and people my age, young adults in limbo, treated it as a pit stop between school, work, and home. It wasn't just a store, it was routine, and routine is where you stop paying attention. By fall of 2019, I was balancing too many things at once. I was in my final semester at Ridgefield Community College, working toward transferring to a four-year university the next spring. To pay for it, I waitressed evenings at a small diner off Highway 12. Between school, work, and the gnawing uncertainty of what came next, I was running on caffeine and stress. I still lived at home to save money. My parents were practical people, always reminding me, don't spend more than you earn, don't move out before you're ready, don't waste what you have. So Red Mart became part of my rhythm. I stopped it nearly every other day, sometimes for toiletries, sometimes for snacks, sometimes just to stretch my legs and avoid the heavy quiet of my own room. By October, the air was sharp with the smell of rain and fallen leaves. Ridgefield looked washed out, gray, damp. The days blurred together. And then one afternoon, ordinary in every way, it began. I pulled into the Red Mart lot around 3:15 p.m. on a Tuesday. The sky was low, swollen with clouds. My windshield wipers squeaked as they cleared away drizzle. I felt a tickle in my throat from the cold I'd been fighting all week, so I figured I'd grab cold medicine. Maybe some vitamins, maybe a throw blanket I'd seen on clearance. I parked near the garden center entrance, my usual spot, and pushed through the automatic doors. The store smelled faintly of buttered popcorn from the little snack stand, and some overplayed top 40 song buzzed through the speakers. Everything about it was familiar, until it wasn't. I noticed him in the cold medicine aisle. He wasn't imposing. If anything, he looked fragile, tall but gaunt, with narrow shoulders hunched as if he wanted to fold into himself. His skin was pale and stretched, his dark hair slicked back with too much gel. A thin beard clung patchily to his jaw. What unsettled me wasn't his build, it was his stillness. He stood too deliberately, too quiet, as if he wasn't browsing, but waiting. His eyes, sunken, restless, didn't wander over products. They stayed fixed. On me. I turned toward the allergy shelf, pretending to compare the store brand to the name brand. But my stomach coiled tighter with each sideways glance. He shifted closer, slow enough that someone else might not notice. You're just paranoid, I told myself. It's a public store. Relax. Then came his voice. Hard to decide, huh? It was soft, almost flat. I blinked, startled. He was closer than I realized. Too close. Yeah, I guess, I said, forcing a thin smile. He didn't step back. Instead, his lips stretched into a grin that didn't reach his eyes. What's your name? The way he asked, it wasn't curious, it was expectant, like he was owed an answer. I lied. Maya. His grin widened. That's pretty. Mine's Eric. I nodded politely, grabbing the larger bottle just to have an excuse to move. I turned to leave. That's when I felt it. His hand light on my shoulder. Not a grip, but enough to freeze me. Wait, he murmured. You're really cute. Let me get your number. Every instinct screamed no, but I froze. I didn't want a scene. Didn't want him to snap. So against everything inside me, I rattled off my actual number. He typed it in like he'd just won a prize. I left shaking. He'll forget by tomorrow, I told myself. I couldn't have been more wrong. By the time I got home, a gray sedan with tinted windows idled near the curb. No plates on the front. My chest clenched. I didn't need to see his face. I knew. I bolted inside, locked the door, and peered out the peephole. The car lingered, then rolled away. That night, the text began. At first, clumsy flirting. Eric, hey, beautiful, glad we met today. Eric, we clicked instantly, didn't we? I ignored them. An hour later, Eric, don't ignore me, Eric. You belong with me. By midnight, Eric, if I see you with anyone else, they'll regret it. I wanted to block him. God, I should have. But a twisted logic kept me from it. If I blocked him, I'd lose my only window into his thoughts. I needed to see what he was planning. Within days, he was everywhere. At the diner where I worked, I'd spot him in a corner booth, staring. At school, he loitered by the parking lot. Once, when my best friend Rachel dropped me home after class, I got a text. Eric, hope your driver enjoyed their face today. Next time I might not let them leave. My blood iced over. I stopped asking Rachel or my dad for rides. I thought isolating myself would keep others safe. Instead, it made me easier prey. 2 weeks later, I went back to Red Mart. I shouldn't have, but I refused to let him dictate my life. Mid-afternoon felt safe. Plenty of people around. As I pulled into the lot, my stomach dropped. A battered gray sedan slid in behind me. I rushed inside. He didn't follow. Not at first. Through the glass doors, I saw him leaning against my car, waiting. My hands shook so badly I dropped my wallet at self-checkout. My eyes darted toward the exit. He was still there. I broke. At the customer service counter, a girl barely older than me, Amber, her name tag read, saw my tears before I spoke. There's a man, I choked out, in the parking lot. He's been following me. She didn't hesitate. She called the manager, who called the police. Through the glass, I watched red and blue lights wash over the lot. Eric bolted for his car, but officers caught him 2 blocks away. He had a loaded handgun under the seat. I sat numb in the fluorescent glow of Red Mart's break room while an officer explained. If you hadn't spoken up, he said quietly, you might not have walked out of here alive. I nodded, but the words barely sank in. Even now, years later, I can't step into a big box parking lot without scanning every car, every shadow. I can't hear a soft male voice behind me without flinching. Routine still comforts me. But I know now, evil loves routine, and it waits where you feel safest. Story 2. I never thought a place as ordinary as a Target could twist into something that would haunt me. For years, it had been the one spot where I felt calm, even safe, a second home in a way. My name's Ethan Morales, 31, and until recently, my life was painfully predictable in Ridgewood, Ohio, a mid-sized city that wasn't remarkable for much besides the football stadium and a Target that stayed open until midnight. That Target had always been my little sanctuary. You have to understand, I worked nights at a hospital call center, 10-hour shifts of answering insurance questions, fielding emergencies, and listening to people scream at me about billing codes. By the time I clocked out at 10:30 p.m., the rest of Ridgewood was shutting down. The only places left were bars, a greasy 24-hour diner. Walmart and Target. Walmart felt chaotic, unsafe. Too many people hanging around the lot after hours. Target thought Target had order. Bright lights, organized aisles, everything lined up neatly like it was waiting for me. It's funny how habits form. For nearly 3 years, my routine barely changed. Finish work, drive to Target, pick up groceries, maybe wander through electronics or grab some toiletries and head home. I wasn't dating, I didn't really go out, and most of my friends had drifted after college. Target became my unwinding ritual. The staff even started to recognize me. Melissa at self-checkout would always wave, and Trevor from electronics sometimes joked, "Man, if you spend any more time here, we'd have to put you on payroll." That comfort is why what happened still feels unreal. It started on a Wednesday night in late September, the kind of night where the air had just turned crisp enough that you needed a jacket, and the parking lot lamps glowed with halos of mist. I parked in my usual spot, a couple of rows back, close enough to see the front entrance, but far enough not to feel boxed in. Inside, the store was almost empty. A few employees were stocking shelves. The usual soft pop music played overhead. Everything seemed normal. I followed my ritual. Produce first, then snacks, then frozen food. I liked patterns. Patterns made me feel in control. But halfway through Frozen, I felt it. That shift, like something invisible, moved the air behind me. I paused at the freezer doors pretending to compare two brands of pizza, but my eyes flicked toward the reflection on the glass. For a split second, I swear I saw someone, dressed in black, standing just a few doors down, staring directly at me. When I turned, no one was there. I laughed it off, long day. Just tired, I grabbed my groceries and finished quickly. Still, as I wheeled my cart to self-checkout, I couldn't shake the goosebumps rising along my arms. A week later, it happened again. Same store, same hour, I was browsing the back aisle near cleaning supplies when I heard it, a metallic thud from behind the shelves. Not the kind of sound from a drop box, something heavier, deliberate. "Hello?" I called out, half expecting an employee. Silence. I crouched, slightly peering through the tiny gap between the shelves and the wall. That's when I saw it, a figure crouched low, dressed in black, face covered by a ski mask. My stomach dropped. I jerked upright and shoved my cart away, forcing myself to keep calm. A voice in my head screamed to run, but another part whispered, "Don't draw attention." I pretended to study detergent, my hand trembling as I reached for the nearest bottle. Footsteps slow, deliberate, keeping pace behind the shelving as I moved down the aisle. I abandoned the cart. My legs moved faster than my brain as I made a beeline toward the front. I spotted an employee, Rachel, I think, stacking cosmetics. "Excuse me," I whispered urgently. "There's someone back by the freezers in a mask." He was following me. Her eyes widened. She grabbed her walkie-talkie. Copy. "I need someone to check back stock near Frozen." She murmured into it, trying to sound calm. "Stay here," she told me. "I'll check." I wanted to scream no, but the words stuck in my throat. Watched her disappear through the swinging doors at the back. Seconds dragged into minutes. My chest pounded like it was going to split open. Finally, Rachel came back, shaking her head. "There's nobody there," she said, forcing a smile. "Stockroom's clear." I nodded like I believed her, but I knew what I saw. The third time, there was no mistaking it. It was a Tuesday 2 weeks later. I'd promised myself I wouldn't go back, but routine pulled me in anyway. I told myself I was being paranoid, that maybe stress was making me see things. But as I left the store that night, grocery bags in hand, I froze. Parked 3 spots away from my car was a white sedan. At first, I thought nothing of it, until I saw the faint outline of someone in the back seat. The hairs on my neck stood straight. I quickened my pace, fumbling with my keys. I opened my trunk and tossed the bags inside. As I shut it, movement caught my eye. The back door of the sedan cracked open, and then he stepped out. The same black hoodie, the same ski mask. My breath caught. He walked straight toward me, calm, intentional. I yanked my door open and dove inside, slamming the lock just as his gloved hand wrapped around the handle. He leaned forward, pressing his masked face against my window. Inches away, I could see his eyes, dark, unblinking, locked onto mine. "Get away!" I screamed, slamming my horn. He didn't move. Adrenaline finally surged. I threw the car in reverse and floored it. The tires screeched as the car shot backward. For one horrifying second, he clung to the side, fingers hooked into the doorframe before I swerved hard. He let go, stumbling back. I didn't stop. I tore out of the lot, heart slamming, breath ragged. I didn't look back until I reached the gas station down the road. I parked, lights off, hands shaking so badly I could barely grip the wheel. Minutes later, headlights appeared. The white sedan. It slowed as it passed the gas station, then accelerated into the night. I didn't sleep for 2 days. Since then, it hasn't stopped. Every parking lot, every late-night trip, I catch glimpses. A flash of black clothing near a cart return, a white sedan idling across the street, and now it's followed me home. Last night, I stepped onto my apartment balcony for air. Across the street, under the flickering lamppost, stood a figure, dressed in black, ski mask on, staring up at me. He didn't move for 10 minutes, just watched. I don't go to Target anymore. I barely leave my apartment, but I know it's not over, because patterns matter, and I broke mine. And something tells me he's waiting for me to come back. Story 3, I never thought a retail job would become the scariest part of my life. When I first applied at the Target store in Dayton, Ohio, I was mostly just looking for something steady, something within walking distance from my apartment. Rent was creeping higher every month. My car had died the previous winter, and I needed a job that didn't require a long commute. It wasn't glamorous, folding clothes, stocking shelves, and helping the occasional customer find the right size. But it gave me structure, a routine, something safe. At least that's what I thought. I'm Rachel Carter, 24 years old, and up until that year, my life was about as ordinary as you could imagine. I grew up in Dayton, went to community college for a while, then dropped out when tuition and bills started piling too high. My parents weren't really in the picture anymore. My mom lived 2 states away, remarried, and my dad, well, he had disappeared long before that. So I built a small, quiet life for myself. I rented a studio apartment a mile away from the Target off Schroyer Road, and every day I'd walk the same cracked sidewalks, earbuds in, coffee in hand, the clock in at the store. It wasn't exciting, but it was predictable. That predictability, those little routines, were what I clung to. I worked mostly in the women's clothing section, the racks of jeans, sweaters, seasonal displays. It was my territory. Other workers had their own zones, electronics, grocery, home goods. But the red aisles of clothing were mine, and I actually liked the quiet rhythm of folding shirts and setting up mannequins. I had a couple of friends there too. Amy, who was my age and worked in shoes, and Marcus, one of the security guys who always tried to make everyone laugh during closing shifts. For 4 months, it was simple, uneventful, until one night when everything shifted. It was a Wednesday evening in late October, the kind of night where the store was slow, the fluorescent lights buzzed a little louder, and the air outside carried the bite of fall. I was in the women's section, refolding a messy pile of flannels. The store was calm, only a handful of customers scattered throughout. I remember glancing up at the overhead clock. 8:17 p.m. 2 more hours until close. That's when I noticed him. A tall man, easily over 6 feet, walking down the main aisle that cut past clothing. He wasn't dressed strangely, just jeans and a dark jacket, but there was something about the way he moved. Purposeful, like he wasn't there to shop, but to look. When his eyes locked on mine, I felt it immediately. That instinctive tightening in my stomach, the prickling sensation on the back of my neck. He smiled, but it wasn't warm. It didn't even look real, just a stretch of lips that never reached his eyes. "Excuse me," he said, voice low and steady. I gave him my usual Target smile. "Hi, how can I help you tonight?" For a moment, he didn't answer. He just stared. And then calmly, almost casually, he said, "You can help me by going out with me tonight." My heart skipped. Customers had flirted before, awkward comments, weird jokes, but something in his tone felt different, too blunt, too assured. I forced a light laugh. "Sorry, I have a boyfriend." It was my go-to line, even though it wasn't true. His smile didn't change. "No, you don't." The way he said it, matter of fact, like he knew something about me, made my stomach twist. "I really do," I said more firmly, shifting my weight, suddenly aware of the emptiness of the aisle around us. "Is there something you're actually looking for tonight? Clothing? A gift?" His eyes didn't waver, and then, softly, he asked, "Yeah, I need directions. To your house." For a second, I thought maybe I misheard. My brain scrambled for a way to laugh it off, to turn it into some bizarre misunderstanding. I gave a nervous chuckle. "Sorry, I really need to get back to work." I turned, walking briskly toward another rack, but his footsteps followed. "Why are you following me?" I asked, finally turning back, pulse hammering. "You're kind of creeping me out." He raised his hands, mock surrender. "My bad." He stepped back a little, still smiling. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to breathe. "Okay, good. Let's keep it that way." I tried to refocus on my work, but when I looked up a few minutes later, I saw him again. Just a few aisles away, staring, not browsing, not pretending to shop, just watching. I moved, he moved. Everywhere I turned, he seemed to reappear. Finally, I grabbed my walkie and pressed the button. "Hey, taking a quick break," I told my supervisor, trying to keep my voice steady. I walked fast toward the front of the store. toward people, toward light. In the break room, I sat in the corner, heart pounding, trying to convince myself I was overreacting. Creepy customers happened. It didn't mean anything worse. When I returned to the floor 20 minutes later, he was gone. And for a while, I thought that was it. A week later, I was working a late shift again. The store was quiet. The kind of eerie silence that happens when the HVAC hum is louder than the customers. I was straightening sweaters when my walkie crackled. "Rachel?" a voice asked. It wasn't my supervisor. It wasn't anyone I recognized. "Yes?" I said cautiously. "Switch to Channel 3. Channel 3 was used for private instructions, usually by management. Without thinking, I adjusted the dial. The voice came again. Flat, male. "I need you in receiving. Now." Receiving was the back of the store where deliveries came in. I rarely went there, but I didn't question it. Orders were orders. The further back I walked, the quieter it got. The fluorescent lights thinned, replaced by dim industrial bulbs. The air felt heavier. Then I froze. From behind one of the shelves, I heard the faint echo of a walkie-talkie. My own voice replayed, and then he stepped out. The same tall man, the same cold smile. Did you call me?" My voice shook. He didn't answer. Just took a slow step closer. "Please don't come any closer," I whispered, backing up. But he did. And when he reached me, his hand clamped down on my arm with terrifying strength. I screamed, thrashing, but the cavernous space swallowed my voice. Then, like a miracle, Amy appeared in the doorway. "What's going on?" she asked, eyes wide. The man released me instantly, bolting toward the back exit. The door slammed open, then shut, leaving only the echo of his footsteps disappearing into the night. The police came. They explained how easy it was for someone to buy a walkie-talkie and tune into our frequency. They searched the lot, the surrounding streets, but he was gone. For weeks, I felt watched. Every aisle, every shift, every shadow outside my apartment. But he never came back, at least not that I saw. Still, sometimes when I close up the store at night, I swear I hear the faint crackle of a walkie on the wrong channel. And when I walk home, I can't help but glance over my shoulder, expecting to see a tall man, smiling that same empty smile, waiting for me in the dark. But I never do. Not yet. Story 4. I never thought of myself as the kind of guy who scared easily. Growing up, I was the one sneaking into old barns, exploring abandoned houses with my cousins, daring friends to walk through the cemetery at night. My wife used to joke that I had a hollow leg for fear, that nothing could really rattle me. But October of 2017 tested that in ways I still can't fully explain. Back then, my wife, her name's Hannah, and I had been living in a mid-sized town called Willow Creek, Illinois. Not tiny, not big, one of those commuter towns about 40 minutes outside of Chicago. You know the type, lots of subdivisions, a couple of schools, a Walmart on one end, a Target on the other, and just enough restaurants and gas stations to keep the place from feeling like the middle of nowhere. We moved there after Hannah landed a solid job as a cardiac nurse at the regional hospital. I was between jobs then, working contract IT gigs and trying to get something permanent. Money was tight, and we were renting this older 2-bedroom duplex off of Laurel Drive. The kind of place with carpets that always smelled faintly of dog, even though we didn't own one. Willow Creek wasn't glamorous, but it was affordable. Safe too, or at least it used to feel that way. That fall, though, something strange started creeping into the town. People on Facebook groups began posting blurry photos of so-called creepy clowns. At first, I thought it was just some recycled internet hoax, like those chain emails our parents used to get. But the posts kept coming. People swore they saw figures in clown costumes standing at the tree line behind Willow Creek High. Others said one was spotted loitering in the strip mall lot, holding balloons. Most folks laughed it off, said it was teenagers screwing around. But it got under people's skin. Even the police department posted a statement on their page, telling residents to avoid engaging with individuals dressed in costumes attempting to provoke fear. That didn't calm anyone down. Hannah was more spooked than I was. I remember one night she shoved her phone in my face, showing me a blurry picture someone uploaded. Looked like a clown standing near the woods behind the bowling alley, wearing some kind of baggy yellow suit. "See?" she whispered, Tell me that's not terrifying. I squinted at the photo, shrugged. Could just be Photoshop. Or, she shot back, it could be a lunatic in a clown mask with a machete. You read the stories. I laughed then, tried to reassure her. But deep down, I couldn't shake how uneasy the town felt that month. The air was heavy, jittery, like people were waiting for something bad to happen. The night it happened was a Thursday, October 19th. I remember because Hannah had come home with one of her migraines. She gets them maybe twice a year. And when they hit hard. Light sensitivity, nausea, the whole works. She was curled on the couch, a blanket over her head, groaning. Babe, she murmured, her voice muffled. Do we have Excedrin? Anything? I checked the bathroom cabinet. Nothing but half a bottle of NyQuil and a dusty box of Band-Aids. Crap, I muttered. What? We're out, totally. She let out this low, miserable whimper. I can't sleep like this. Please, can you just... I'll go grab some. I cut her off before she had to beg. Our car, our only car, was parked uselessly in the garage with a dead alternator we hadn't been able to afford to fix yet. So walking was my only option. Luckily, the Target on Brookfield Avenue was just about a 10-minute walk. Normally, I didn't mind. But that night, the thought of walking alone in the dark, with all those clown sightings stuck in my brain, didn't exactly thrill me. I hesitated at the door, hoodie in hand. You okay? Hannah asked softly from the couch. Yeah, I lied. Be back in a few. The streets of Willow Creek were quieter than usual that night. It wasn't just the kind of quiet you get in the suburbs. No, this was heavier. Even the crickets seemed muted, like the whole town was holding its breath. I kept my hood up, hands jammed in my pockets, and walked fast. Brookfield Avenue stretched straight toward Target, past the Methodist Church and the small wooded strip everyone called Gibson Park. During the day, people walked their dogs there. At night, though, it was just a wall of black trees. I wasn't about to take any shortcuts. Halfway there, I thought I heard something, soft, like high-pitched laughter carried by the wind. I froze, listening. Silence. Get a grip, I muttered under my breath, forcing myself forward. But a block later, I heard it again, giggling. Closer this time. Every hair on my arm stood on end. I sped up, heart pounding. My ears strained for footsteps, for anything, but all I could hear was my own pulse hammering. That's when I saw him, just beyond the glow of a street lamp, standing at the edge of the park. A figure in white, baggy costume, red hair, painted smile, and worse, something glinting in his hand, a machete. I froze for half a second too long, his head tilted like he was studying me. Then, in a sing-song voice, he called out, "Where you going, buddy?" That broke me. I bolted. I don't remember much of the run, just the adrenaline. My lungs burned, legs screaming, but I didn't dare look back. His footsteps thudded behind me, slow at first, almost playful, then suddenly faster. "Run, little piggy," he called, laughter spilling into the night. I gasped, pushing harder than I ever had, the red glow of Target's sign coming into view like salvation. The automatic doors slid open just in time for me to stumble inside and collapse on the cold tile floor. Shoppers stared. A cashier froze, holding a stack of hangers. I scrambled to my feet, breathless. There's someone, outside, a clown, with a machete." People looked at me like I was drunk. One teenager laughed outright. A girl in a red vest, maybe 19, approached cautiously. Her name tag read Sierra. "Sir, you need to calm down," she said. "There's nobody out there." "I swear to God, he was right behind me." My voice cracked. "Please, just check." She exchanged a look with an older manager, a heavy-set guy with thinning hair. He sighed, clearly annoyed. "All right, let's take a look," he muttered. We stepped outside together. The lot was empty. Still. "You see anybody?" he asked flatly. My stomach twisted. "No, but he was there. He was there." "Probably some punk kid messing with you," the manager said. "Happens every year around Halloween. Best thing you can do is ignore it." But I couldn't shake the feeling of eyes on me. I killed almost an hour wandering the aisles, pretending to shop, too terrified to step back outside. My basket had the Excedrin in it, but my hands shook every time I reached for my phone. When the intercom finally announced the store was closing, I gave in and downloaded Uber. The driver, a middle-aged woman named Linda, didn't say a word when she saw the pickup and drop-off were less than a mile apart. On the ride home, we passed Gibson Park. Out of the corner of my eye, I glanced toward the trees, and I saw him, half hidden at the tree line, machete glinting, wide painted grin, watching. I didn't tell Linda. I couldn't. My throat locked up. I just prayed we'd get home. I never walked that road again. Never even parked near that side of Target. Months later, Hannah told me Target corporate stopped selling clown masks altogether. Too many complaints. But it didn't matter. The damage was done. I'd learned something that October. Some smiles hide real monsters, and not all of them wait in your nightmares. Some of them wait for you under the flickering lights of a parking lot. Story 5. I never thought a simple evening shift could change the way I looked at my job forever. I was 19 at the time, working part-time as a cart attendant at the Target in Maplewood, Ohio. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills and gave me enough for gas and the occasional night out. My parents lived on the other side of town, and I was saving up to move into an apartment with a buddy from school. That meant every extra shift counted, and tonight was no different. The clock read 10:12 p.m. when I wheeled a half-full row of carts back to the corral near the entrance. The night air was sticky, the kind of Midwest humidity that clung to your skin, even though the sun had long set. I'd gotten used to working nights. In fact, I liked them. Most people hated the quiet, the emptiness of the parking lot after hours, but for me it was peaceful. The chaos of the day faded into silence. The laughter and arguments of families, the slam of trunks, the screech of shopping carts, it all disappeared. By the time it was just me in the lot, it felt like I had the whole world to myself. Except that night, something was off. When I first started at Target, I thought pushing carts was mindless work. Walk the rows, gather them, bring them in, repeat. But after a year, I'd learned it was more complicated than people thought. Customers never left carts neatly corralled. Some would abandon them on medians, others in empty spaces, and a few would even shove them into bushes. It meant I walked the entire lot every night and became familiar with every corner. The northeast section near the old streetlight that flickered, the far west side by the gas station, and the lonely southern edge where almost no one parked after dark. I knew the lot better than I knew my own neighborhood, which is why I noticed right away when something didn't fit. I was walking along the northeast end, grabbing 2 stray carts, when headlights swept across me. An SUV rolled in, newer model, black paint gleaming even under the dull parking lot lamps. At first I thought nothing of it. Customers sometimes arrived late for last-minute runs. But this one didn't pull into a space. Instead it slowed, then stopped directly in front of me, blocking my path. I shielded my eyes against the glare of the high beams. Can I help you?" I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. The driver's door opened and a man stepped out. Stocky building, dark jacket. I couldn't make out his face in the shadows, but his posture was tense, like he'd been waiting for me. "Hey there," he said, his voice low but carrying across the lot. "You work here, right?" "Yeah," I replied cautiously. He gestured vaguely toward the SUV. "My car's making this weird noise. You know anything about engines?" I frowned. "Not really. I mean, I can take a look, but I'm not a mechanic." He nodded like that was fine, then took a few steps closer. His boots scuffed against the asphalt. "Actually," he said, "it's easier if you sit inside and listen while I drive. That way you'll hear it for yourself." The words hit me like ice water. Every instinct screamed no. I forced a laugh to break the tension. Yeah, I don't think I can do that. Sorry, man. Liability and all that." His expression, or what little I could see of it, didn't change. "Come on, it'll only take a second." I gripped the cart handle tighter, heart hammering. "I can't, really. I've got to finish up out here." I turned away, hoping that would end it. "Wait," he barked. The sharpness in his voice made me flinch. I didn't stick around. I shoved the cart forward and started walking quickly toward the store. That's when I heard it. Footsteps. Heavy. Following me. I didn't think. I just ran. The metal carts rattled as I pushed them ahead like a shield, sprinting across the empty lot. Behind me, his boots pounded against the pavement. "Hey, get back here!" he shouted. My lungs burned. My chest heaved. The glowing red Target logo never looked so inviting. The automatic doors slid open, and I burst inside, nearly colliding with the guest services desk. Cool air wrapped around me, but the heat in my body wouldn't go away. A cashier near the entrance gave me a startled look. "You okay?" "Yeah," I panted. Just a guy outside. He wanted me to get in his car." Her eyes widened. "What?" Before I could answer, I glanced back. The SUV was still idling near the far end of the lot. Its headlights flickered once, then went dark. I tried to shake it off. Maybe he'd leave. Maybe he was just some weird guy messing with me. But the unease stuck, gnawing at my stomach. So I stayed close to the entrance, stacking carts, straightening baskets, doing anything that kept me under the cameras. By 11 o'clock, I was due for my break. Reluctantly, I headed inside, down the back hallway to the employee break room. It was small, a couple of vending machines, old tables, and a TV mounted on the wall nobody ever watched. I sat down scrolling my phone, trying to distract myself. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Then, the door creaked. I figured it was another employee. Without looking up, I said, "What's up?" Silence. My gut tightened. Slowly, I turned. He was there. The man from the SUV, standing in the doorway, staring at me. His face was clearer now. Sharp jaw, pale skin, eyes too dark. I froze. "How the hell did you get in here?" He didn't answer. Just stared. I shot up from my chair, knocking it back, and bolted for the side exit that led to the loading dock. I slammed through the door, the metal handle biting into my palm, and sprinted outside. The night air hit me like a wall, but adrenaline carried me forward. I rounded the building and ran for the front entrance again, my chest aching, legs burning. Inside, the manager, Rachel, was near the registers. I nearly collided with her. Whoa, what's going on?" she asked. There's a man in the break room. Same guy from the lot. He's here." I gasped. Her face hardened. "Show me." She grabbed her walkie-talkie, called for security, and we hurried back. But when we opened the break room door, it was empty. No man, no trace. Just my overturned chair and the buzzing lights. Security combed the building, checked cameras, even walked the lot. They found nothing. No SUV, no stranger, no sign anyone had come inside. Rachel put a hand on my shoulder. "You've had a long night. Why don't you clock out early?" I did, but as I drove home, headlights in my rear view made my stomach twist. Every shadow looked like him. Every dark corner whispered his name. That night, I locked every door twice, checked every window, and sat awake until dawn. I kept working at Maplewood Target for another 6 months. I never saw him again. But sometimes, late at night, when I walk through a parking lot and hear footsteps behind me, I can still feel his eyes, watching. Story 6. I had been dreading that Friday night all week, the kind of week that feels like quicksand, endless, suffocating, and grinding. My name is Maya Thompson, and I work customer service at a local bank in Ridgeway, a small town in Wisconsin. Normally, my shifts are manageable, but the end of the month turns our branch into chaos. People call, they yell, they cry, and they curse at things they don't fully understand. Overdraft fees, declined transfers, suspicious charges. By Friday, my patience had evaporated entirely. That morning, as if the universe decided to mock me, my period hit like a freight train. Cramps, nausea, and mood swings made me feel like my own body was a battleground. I had planned a low-effort, guilt-free night. Greasy pizza, a heating pad, and binge-watching something shallow and ridiculous. But then I discovered I had exactly one tampon left. I sat on the edge of my bathtub staring at the half-empty cabinet, debating if I could make it until morning. But tomorrow wasn't going to be kind. My best friend Jenna had dragged me to a yoga class at 8 a.m., followed by brunch with her new boyfriend, a finance guy who already rubbed me the wrong way just from his Instagram posts. I sighed, grabbed my keys, threw on a hoodie over my pajama pants, and muttered, Well, Target it is. The parking lot of Ridgeway Target was mostly empty, the fluorescent bulbs overhead buzzing like anxious insects. I parked under a flickering lamp and tried to convince myself this was routine. In and out. 5 minutes. Inside, the store smelled faintly of disinfectant and stale coffee. The shelves were half-stocked, some products stacked crookedly. The faint overhead music had cut out somewhere between the seasonal decor and the electronics section. A teenage cashier slouched behind the register, thumb scrolling furiously on her phone. The only other customers were an older couple arguing quietly about dog food and a man digging through the discount bin, muttering under his breath. I made a beeline for the feminine hygiene aisle, grabbing my usual brand of tampons. That's when I saw him. He was standing about 20 feet away, shoulders hunched, cap pulled low over thinning hair, scanning the aisle. Not the products, but everything. My chest tightened. Just being paranoid, I muttered to myself. I reached for toothpaste, glancing casually over my shoulder. He had shifted, now appearing near the razors. Not shopping, just following. "Hey, can I help you find anything?" The cashier said distractedly as I grabbed the toothpaste. "No, just curious. Does the store have security? I noticed a man acting odd." My voice was tight. The girl blinked, putting her phone down. "We have someone who does rounds sometimes." I forced myself to calm down, hoping I was imagining it. But every few aisles he appeared, just out of reach, pretending to browse. My heart raced. Maybe I should leave. But tomorrow I had obligations. And something inside me, the part that always hoped for the best in people, hesitated. I zigzagged through the store. Home goods, vitamins, cleaning supplies, trying to test him. Seconds later, he appeared again, his gaze too calculating to be random. I made a dash for the checkout. The cashier barely looked up as I approached, fumbling with my card. There's a man following me. Could you call someone?" She mumbled, I'll page a manager." But I didn't wait. Outside, the parking lot stretched in silence. My steps echoed on the asphalt as I clutched my keys, thumb hovering over the panic button. Then I heard it, a shuffle behind me. I spun around. Nothing. I froze. Then came the grip. Strong, fast, and terrifying. He yanked me backward, shoving me against my own car. I screamed, fought, twisted. He was stronger than I anticipated, his hands pinning me as he muttered, "Quiet, sweetheart. Don't make this worse." Panic took over. I kicked, bit, and screamed until a blur of blue appeared, a man in a hoodie charging out of the shadows. He yanked the attacker off me, fists flying, the fight echoing across the empty lot. I scrambled to my car, shaking, fumbling with the lock. Click. The fight ended abruptly. My attacker disappeared into the darkness. I dialed 911, voice shaking, tears streaming. The dispatcher's calm voice was a lifeline in the chaos. When police arrived, they reviewed store footage and questioned me repeatedly. It turned out the man had been following multiple women that night, and worse, he matched the description of a suspect wanted for a murder in the neighboring county. Wrapped in a scratchy police blanket, sitting in the back of the squad car, I stared at my reflection in the side mirror. My stomach churned, my hands trembled, and all I could think was, if that stranger hadn't been there, would I have been next? Ridgeway felt smaller and darker that night, the once familiar streets suddenly threatening. My sense of safety had been shattered, replaced with the raw realization that danger often hides in plain sight, and sometimes it only takes one aisle for a life to change forever. Story 7. I had always thought working the late shift at a big box store would be dull. Sure, repetitive, sometimes frustrating, but dangerous? That idea never crossed my mind. My name is Clara Bennett, 24, born and raised in the small town of Willow Creek, Nebraska. After graduating high school, I bounced around odd retail jobs before landing at Summit General, the biggest store in town, something between a Target and a Walmart. The pay wasn't great, but it kept the lights on and my car running. It was late October, a week before Halloween. The store was still covered in plastic pumpkins, fake cobwebs, and garish orange lights, though by now the seasonal aisle had that slightly musty, neglected smell you only get in places where people have stacked and forgotten decorations. I was in the general merchandise section, folding clothes that nobody had returned to the racks properly, straightening shelves and occasionally mopping up small spills. Tonight felt routine. The wind outside rattled the front glass doors, reminding me how empty the parking lot was this late. Our store closed at 10 p.m., and it was already 9:37. Most customers had trickled out, leaving only a few slow-moving stragglers wandering the aisles. I glanced at my watch, sighed, and thought about the leftover spaghetti waiting in my fridge, my warm bed, and the heating blanket I'd curl up under in 23 minutes. Then I saw him, a man standing at the end of the home section aisle. He was tall, thin, wearing a faded dark hoodie pulled over his head. His jeans were stiff, dirty, like he hadn't changed them in days. His posture was unnervingly rigid, arms hanging straight at his sides, staring straight ahead at nothing. Not the shelves, not the products, just nothing. I froze behind a display of discounted candles, unsure if I should approach or duck and pretend I hadn't noticed. My pulse ticked faster, a creeping sense of unease crawling up my spine. "Clara?" I jumped. Jason, my shift supervisor, leaned against a cart stacked with cardboard boxes, sipping a lukewarm coffee. His tired eyes followed mine. Yeah, just someone hanging around," I said, forcing a laugh that felt hollow. "He's been standing there a while," Jason said, squinting. "You want me to—" "No," I interrupted quickly. "Probably just waiting for someone." I told myself to shrug it off. Weird people loitered all the time. Still, when I looked back, he was gone. I blinked. The aisle was empty. No nearby exits, no bathrooms, no sign of him anywhere. I tried to shove the chill down my spine and threw myself into restocking the electronics counter. But then I saw him again, closer this time, by the phone accessories, standing unnaturally still, like a statue. His head tilted, studying the locked cases of prepaid phones. I swallowed hard and forced my best customer service smile. "Excuse me, sir. We're closing in about 20 minutes. Can I help you find anything?" "Nothing." I cleared my throat louder. "Sir?" He turned slowly. His eyes were wide, unnerving, almost hollow, and he smiled. A slow, crooked smile that didn't reach his eyes. Then, barely above a whisper, "Are you the only one left?" My stomach dropped. Before I could respond, he turned and vanished behind the seasonal aisle. I ran to the security podium. "Paul? Hey, Paul. There's a guy acting really weird near electronics. Can you check the cameras?" Paul, the overnight security guy, a retired cop in his 60s, leaned into the monitor. "Gray hoodie?" he asked, already flipping through the feeds. "Yes, he's moving toward the back." Paul nodded. "I'll walk the floor. Don't panic." I tried to focus on restocking, but the dread lingered like a shadow. At 9:55 p.m., the closing announcement played over the speakers. I counted heads. Something was wrong. Where was Hoodie Guy? Where were the remaining customers? And, "Paul?" Jason picked up the radio. "Paul, report to the front immediately. This isn't funny." Nothing. Silence. The lights in the seasonal aisle flickered, then went out. I froze. "Breaker?" I asked, voice trembling. Jason shook his head. "Number that aisle only?" Footsteps pounded toward us. Fast, deliberate. I screamed. Paul burst from the darkness, panting, eyes wide, pale as chalk. "We need to lock the store, now." "What's happening?" Jason demanded. Paul shook his head, gripping his flashlight like it was a weapon. He's not right. He's not human." Before working security, Paul had been a detective in Omaha. He dealt with murderers, thieves, even one man who claimed to be possessed. He had never looked afraid, until now. "The cameras," he gasped. "I saw him in every corner at once. He doesn't move like a person. He just appears." Jason and I exchanged a look. "He's feeding on fear," Paul whispered, voice shaking. "The store, it empties. Everyone else disappears first." We barricaded ourselves in the office, heartbeats loud in the tiny room. We could hear the faint scratching, the soft shuffle of steps outside, sometimes stopping, then circling again. Minutes stretched into an eternity. Then at 10:02, the lights snapped back on. The store was empty, silent, normal. No Hoodie Guy, no customers, no signs of Paul's patrol. We called the local police, but there were no reports of a missing person, no evidence of anyone entering the store after hours. Paul quit the next day. Jason requested day shifts, and I never worked closing shifts again. Sometimes when the wind rattles the front windows of Summit General, I swear I can hear faint footsteps. Slow, deliberate, watching, waiting for the store to empty again. Because he's still out there. Story 8, I had been working at Brookside Market, a modest grocery store tucked into the quieter side streets of Haverhill, Massachusetts, for nearly 3 years. It wasn't glamorous work by any stretch, but it paid rent and kept me afloat while I finished my final semester at community college. The night shift in particular was almost painfully uneventful most nights. Usually I'd wander the aisles with only a handful of late-night customers, stocking shelves and counting inventory, and I found the routine comforting, a rhythm I could sink into. Most nights the store seemed almost sacred in its emptiness. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, their glow casting everything in a muted, sterile white. Occasionally a breeze would slip in from the slightly cracked back door, carrying with it the faint scent of wet asphalt and distant rain. But tonight was different. The day had been oppressive, gray clouds smothering the sky, and now as I finished organizing the snack aisle around 11:15 p.m., the storm that had been threatening all day had finally arrived. Rain pounded against the windows, the wind shaking the glass with a ferocity that made the store feel fragile, like it could collapse under the force of the storm at any second. A customer caught my attention. She was a girl, maybe 18, standing near the checkout with a small cart, glancing around nervously. Her brown hair was pulled into a messy bun, a few strands escaping to cling to her damp forehead. She wore a faded jean jacket over a pastel-colored dress, sneakers scuffed from constant use. I had seen people nervous at night before, but something about her looked different, terrified, almost on edge, as though she was trying not to be noticed while simultaneously searching for someone. I tried to ignore it at first, chalking it up to nerves. But then I noticed him, a man mid-50s, tall and lean, standing at the register with a smirk that didn't reach his eyes. He wore a plain dark jacket and jeans, but there was a predatory stillness to him, the way he lingered just a little too long on the girl, scanning her as if assessing prey. My stomach clenched. I walked toward her, my steps cautious, hoping not to spook her. "Hey," I said softly, keeping my voice low. "You okay?" She jumped slightly and turned to me, her eyes wide. "Yeah," she murmured, voice tight. "Just grabbing some last-minute things?" I wasn't convinced. The man at the register muttered something to himself under his breath, and I felt the heat of his gaze on me. "I'll wait," I said, nodding toward the girl. She didn't return after several minutes, and I started to feel uneasy. Not the typical unease of a late-night worker in a storm, but something heavier, something primal. I walked toward the snack aisle where she had been, only to find her cart abandoned at the end, snacks scattered as though she had dropped them in a hurry. "Hello?" I called, my voice echoing in the empty store. The storm outside made my words sound small, swallowed by the roar of rain and wind. No answer. I checked the aisles, my flashlight flicking across the shelves. Nothing. The store felt different now. Smaller somehow, corners stretching into shadows that shouldn't exist. My chest tightened. My phone had no signal, typical for this part of town during storms, but that didn't make me feel any safer. Then from behind me I heard it, a soft, terrified whimper. I spun, flashlight trembling, and saw her. She was drenched, face pale, eyes wide with a fear so raw it made my own skin crawl. "He locked us in," she whispered, voice trembling. I froze. "Who?" "The man. He has a gun." "I saw it," she said, shivering violently. I didn't know what to think. He hadn't seemed dangerous to me, just strange. But her terror felt real, and the storm outside seemed to press against the walls of the store, making everything claustrophobic. "Let's check the front door," I said, keeping my voice calm. "Maybe we can get out and call the police." She nodded, following me cautiously. We moved slowly through the darkened aisles, the beam of my flashlight slicing through the black like a knife. Every shadow seemed alive, every reflection in the linoleum floor a possible threat. When we reached the front of the store, I went to grab the keys from the counter, praying the locks weren't engaged. Then I heard footsteps behind me. Soft, deliberate, but impossible to place. My heart raced. From the end of the aisle he appeared. Bloody, wild-eyed, holding a wrench. He's dead, he stammered, shaking, his voice high-pitched with terror. I turned to her, but she was gone. The girl, the one who had seemed terrified, was no longer anywhere in sight. "Where is she?" I demanded, panic creeping into my voice. The man's hands shook as he spoke. She came from the back, out of nowhere. I didn't... I felt a presence behind me, cold and deliberate. A soft, calculated step, moving closer. My hand went to the wrench he had dropped, heart hammering against my ribs. Then she appeared. Not running, not scared. Her eyes, empty, hollow, like the light inside had gone out. Her lips curled into a twisted smile. "You should have left," she whispered. I swung the wrench at her, but my hand passed through her. She wasn't there. The storm raged around us, the windows shaking violently. And then, silence. The lights flickered on. She was gone. The man was still there, eyes wide with terror. She's not human," he whispered, voice breaking. I glanced toward the back room. A door had appeared, a dark rectangle that hadn't been there before. I ran. Inside, the darkness pressed against me, suffocating, and there at the center was a mirror. My reflection stared back, but wrong, twisted, grotesque. Behind me, she stood in the shadows, grinning. The door slammed. The world went black. That was the last night I ever worked the night shift at Brookside Market. No one ever found the girl, or the man. Police searched, but the back room, the mirror, the door, it was gone. Just another story, they said, a figment of the imagination. But I know what I saw, and I'll never forget her smile.